From the Ticats Audio Network, this is Ticats Today with Louie B.
Yes, it is Ticats Today for a Wednesday, October the 13th, 2021. And the Ticats still on a bye week for the next few days. So very pleased to be joined now by CFL and CSN's Glen, Suitor, talking about the Ticats and everything CFL. Suits, it's always great to connect with you. Let's talk about that Ticats game, because for the second game in a row, to losing on a field goal, it definitely stings for Ticats fans and the team.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. I can understand that. And, I know the team feels, worse than anyone about it, and the players and the coaching staff. But, I think the approach here is that every win this season, including with Ottawa right now, Ottawa all of a sudden has hope with their new quarterback in Caleb Evans, and they're playing better. So, I think every single game will have to be earned. The wins will have to be earned, and you have to finish games, and you have to make those plays, not have the lull that I think Hamilton's had in back-to-back weeks where, there's been a space of time sort of in the middle of the game that they kind of take their foot off the pedal a little bit after having leads, and those leads evaporate quickly. These games have been close. Last weekend was real tight football, back and forth, one possession games all the way down to the wire.
I know Marshall Ferguson had tweeted it out. He said the Ticats, only trailed in about 8% of their possessions on offense in the last 2 weeks. And is there a level of frustration? Like, how do you overcome that frustration as a player when it feels like you're doing most of the things right? It comes down to the statistics battle. When it comes down to losses like that, like, as a player, how do you overcome that frustration that might come with results like the last 2 weeks we've seen?
Well, it's basically back to fundamentals. It really is. It's back to fundamentals. It's just making sure you categorize your priorities so that for instance, that this next play is the most important play, not looking too far beyond. I know that sounds like a cliche, but it really is as simple as that. You get down to the fundamentals of why you're there, why you made the team in the first place, the work ethic that's necessary. And I'm not suggesting they're not working hard. That's not fair at all, because I'm sure they are. It's about just getting back to the little corrections that need to be made. And you watch the video, every single player, if they're honest with themselves, they'll be looking at the video and saying, okay, yeah, I know exactly why I got beat by that player on that play. And I'll make sure it doesn't happen again, because I'm going to work on that fundamental, whether it be backpedaling or turning out of your backpedal as a DB, coming out of your break as a receiver, making sure you finish and look straight at the ball the entire way through. Those sound like simple things, but a receiver just watching the ball hit his hands and putting it away before he turns and looks upfield, that fundamental is often overlooked, and even the best in the business, no matter what side of the border you're on, will make that mistake. So I really think it's just getting back to the fundamentals and believing. I mean, Jeremiah Masoli throws for almost 400 yards, 360-something yards, 2 touchdowns, not an interception, and the club loses. I mean, those are numbers that should generate a win, and yet they don't, and they don't in this case, because they didn't finish and they didn't keep their foot on the pedal earlier in the game, and that's where they'll go back and make adjustments.
Hitch and I were talking about this in the post-game show, that they were looking for that knockout punch, and we even talked about it at the half, where it was like, okay, the Ticats played really good football. It felt like they should have been up by more than however much they were up at the half. Like, how do you learn how to deliver that knockout punch? Because it's tough to find. You mentioned it, that there was a point in that Montreal game, they were up 17-3. It looked like it was over. And there was a certain point against the Argos on Monday as well. Like, how do you learn to knock them out?
Yeah, I think, again, once you get back and you look at the little things that you weren't doing during the lull, and that you were doing at the beginning of the game when you earned the lead, when you got the lead, you worked hard to get there, you'll see the differences. You'll see the drop-off and the mistakes that were being made in that lull. So then it becomes, the reminder over and over again that you can't be scoreboard watching during a football game. It really is that simple. I mean, there are situational football that you have to look at. There is, situations where, you have a big lead and you maybe run the ball more. those kind of things. And that's up to the coach to make those decisions and to make those determinations as to how he's going to call the game. But for a player, you just can't get caught looking at the scoreboard like we're up, we're okay. It's not even a conscious decision to look at the scoreboard and say, yeah, we've got a 10-point lead, so I'm going to cruise now. No one thinks that way. But it's kind of like I've always made the analogy of the difference between regular season hockey and playoff hockey. There is an absolute different level between regular season and playoffs. And it's why we love playoff hockey. But if you could bottle that and you could do it every single down in the regular season, you'd have the best team in the league. But you can't. It's not something you consciously try to do, like relax, but it happens. It's human nature. So no scoreboard watching during the game. Take care of your assignment. Next play matters the most. And stick to the fundamentals. Go through those fundamentals and that playlist in your head.
And it seems like this Ticats coaching staff, like with Coach O, with Tommy, with Mark Washington, with Jeff Reinbold, the coordinators, the coaching staff, it just seems like they have the right pieces in place to really hammer that point home.
Yeah, I'm not seeing any in-game mistakes, big decisions that are, that you'd want back at the end of a game. I mean, there's small ones all the time, but I'm not seeing these glowing mistakes that happen in game as far as sort of game management goes with the coaching staff. And, they look prepared. They look like they have good game plans. That's why they get out to early leads. They have good game plans. And it's not even, I know people would then go, well, maybe it's not adjustments then. They're not doing enough adjusting as the game goes on. That's not true either, really. So at least I'm not seeing it. I'm not seeing that all of a sudden the opponent makes massive adjustments and Hamilton doesn't correct, to match it. So, I would say that, again, these games are going down to the wire, and you can't overlook any team. You can't look past any play. And I think teams are learning that. They're learning it in the West too. That the games in the West, the Saskatchewan game against Calgary, they were in the same position. I mean, a dropped William Powell pass or Saskatchewan wins instead of Calgary in that game. And it came down to one or two plays. So you just don't know which one they are. There's an analogy, or there's the old cliche that I'll use in that case, is that it's one or two, three plays. You just don't know which ones.
You mentioned Jeremiah Masoli, and obviously, he's kind of been talked about all season long. First, there was the quarterback competition in camp. He wins the starting job. He gets hurt. It seemed like that was the closest to 2019 Jeremiah Masoli that we saw. You mentioned his stat line, and it feels like he's right on the cusp of having that big game that the team needs, but I think more importantly, that Jeremiah needs. Not that he's lacking confidence, but I feel like he needs a big game with a big win to really kind of solidify who he is almost.
Yeah, it's a great point. It's like it validates the process. You're working real hard. Your numbers are there. You're not making the glaring mistake, and yet you've lost a couple. And you're trying to figure that out. And what happens is the self-doubt will start to creep in. Am I doing enough? Am I doing the right type of work? Am I doing the right type of studying? And those questions start to, bother you to a point where, and I don't think they have. I haven't seen it anyway from Hamilton players yet. But they can get in your head, and then you're in your head, and now it compounds the problem. So, I think it can validate the process when you do get that win. And that's, like I said, that it's game to game, and preparing for the next one is the most important right now because they're in the thick of the fight. Jeremiah has looked good. He's looked good. And Dane Evans is close. It looked like in the warm-up, Dane Evans was throwing the ball really hard. So, both those quarterbacks being healthy and available is also going to help the bigger picture.
Yeah, that's a great point. And we're talking about going into the bye week right now. We mentioned that. Ticats are. How important was it for you as a player to either, focus on, what's gone on since the last bye week or how the season's been going, and also the balance of try to get away, try to clear your mind. This is such a mental game. It's especially coming back after a pandemic. It just seems like it's been football. What's your kind of balance between a bye week on the physical side, the mental side? How did you look at it as a player?
Well, the way I handled it was to do a little bit of both. Like go back home, see your family, see the ones you love, but take video with you. So you have your computer full of all the games that you just played, so that at night after dinner, when the kids are in bed or however your family situation looks, you spend a couple of hours looking and self-evaluating. It's a great chance to, really make notes on your own play, because during a regular work week, you are looking at the opponent and studying the opponent. You don't get as much chance to, other than right after a game, you don't get a whole bunch of chance during the week to self-evaluate. So I think, I used the time to sort of do a little bit of both. But I hear often fans say, they should just, if they've lost a couple going into a bye, they should stop. They should stay all at the facility, and they should work hard and practice every single day and not go home. And I couldn't disagree with that more. I think when you walk in the door and your kids meet you that you haven't seen in a few months, it not only refreshes you, but it also reminds you of the sense of urgency that's necessary to go back and win. Because those are the kids that are looking to you to put food on the table. And that reminder in real time, seeing them, I don't think there's any more motivation needed than to walk in, see your family, and realize it's up to you to win games. And if you win games, you stay on the roster, you can put food on the table.
Well said. And, I think one of the underlooked storylines with this Ticats team is just, every team's been dealing with injuries. But when you look at the key impact players that the Ticats have been dealing with, you miss Braylon Addison for the first 7 games of the season. Frankie Williams would have been a super valuable player in a game like we saw in Toronto. They're not going to make excuses. It's a next man up mentality team. But how difficult is that for a coaching staff and for players to kind of have that plug and play throughout the season when, your bodies are aching and it's tough to find consistency in the lineup?
Well, I'll try and find a half full version of this answer, because you're right, and it's difficult. And you lose Speedy B and a playmaker like that for a couple of games, and it makes an impact, absolutely. But you're right, a lot of teams have gone through it, and they have to keep finding new ways. But here's the half full answer, because as this goes on, and it does every season, you are now getting more experience to more players on your roster. You're going deeper into your roster, and those players can emerge. Sometimes they become instant stars, and sometimes they're not noticed, but they're getting valuable experience. And that valuable experience pays off when you're heading into a playoff game 4 or 5 weeks later down the road, and all of a sudden the guy wakes up in the shower and he's got a back issue, and you step in and this young guy has got 4 or 5 games of experience when you missed your star during the beginning of the year, and he's ready to play in that playoff game. So, that's the silver lining of injuries, but it's part of it. It's why, Louis, it's kind of like why not everyone can play this game, because it's a physical game. There's going to be bumps and bruises. You're going to have to sit out a couple of times, and someone else gets an opportunity.
Yeah, and for the Ticats, with the Addison, the Banks, the DeVere Posey injury to start the season before being released, the emergence of guys like Stephen Dunbar Jr. or Tim White or even Pappy White obviously have been huge for the Ticats here. All right, let's move on from the Ticats. Let's talk about kind of the CFL as a whole, because there's a couple of quarterback topics going on right now. Vernon Adams Jr. We'll stick with the East to start, but Vernon Adams Jr. on the 6-game injured list. Montreal's right there, second in the East Division. They're trying to keep pace with Toronto, but this has to be a huge blow for Montreal and where they're at right now in the season.
Yeah, it's a tough one, because again, Vernon Adams was starting to develop into the guy who was figuring it out early on in the season. It looked like he was in his head a little bit and was a little inconsistent. He still showed the great things that he did, that everyone got excited about with Vernon Adams, but he showed inconsistency to a point where they started to lose a couple games, and then they started coming back. And for this to happen the way it did, I mean, he was trying to get extra yards, reaching with the football, takes a hit, on the way. And, it's an interesting discussion on its own when it comes to quarterbacks hook sliding, trying not to take hits, or going for that extra yard or two. That's a discussion for another day. But, it is going to be a blow. The one thing that I'll say about the way Matthew Schultz came in is that he came in with great enthusiasm, made a couple of plays. It wasn't a large body of work, but he looked like he was prepared and ready to get that opportunity. And we'll see. He's going to have the ball in his hands now, and we'll see how long William Stanback's out. But they got some production out of their backup. So yeah, it's like you just said, it's part of the game, and it's part of overcoming adversity.
All right, from east to west, an interesting situation developing in Edmonton. Head coach Jamie Elizondo saying they're going to be I don't want to say moving on from Trevor Harris, but at least right now at this point of the season, they are, as he'll be the third string quarterback. What do you make of this situation? Trevor Harris is someone who I feel like has kind of earned a reputation in this league, but obviously the results aren't coming for him or the Elks right now. What are your thoughts on what's going on in Edmonton right now?
Yeah, it's a tough one to figure out. Not because I'm surprised at the move, because by the lack of production in the Winnipeg game for Trevor Harris coming back from that injury, I guess we shouldn't be completely surprised. Taylor Cornelius had played when Trevor was down and showed some positive signs. I mean, still made 2 or 3 crucial mistakes in the games that he started that really became the reason they lost. But not surprising when you see just the lack of production in the Winnipeg game. So the question now is, what do you do with a guy with that type of price tag just prior to the trade deadline, and you're not even going to dress him? I mean, to have a quarterback who technically, and we don't really have this designation in the CFL, but I'll just use it. Technically, he is the franchise player and the franchise price tag, and now he's not even going to dress for games when he's healthy. That's a lot of money to be not dressing. So I would say that, and I'm speculating completely here, that teams will be getting the phone call about whether or not any team is interested in a trade for Trevor Harris. I mean, I don't know what else you do. If this is the decision the coach has made to not even dress him, how do you leave that kind of payroll, that kind of money, in street clothes?
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see. And it has been strangely quiet on the trade front, and you wonder what the situation is going on there, and like I said, the trade deadline coming up. I want to talk about the Winnipeg Blue Bombers because they really are the class of the CFL right now, kind of running away with the West Division, running away with the standings lead. What have you seen from them as the defending champions? Is it their Grey Cup to lose at this point right now from what you've seen? Yeah,
they're the best team in the league. They're the best team in the league because they have the best offensive line, the best defensive line in front seven. And because of that, because they control the line of scrimmage when they play, can run the ball and pass it and throw it with Zach Collaros, that this is the best team in the league. And they have separated themselves from the pack. And it is their Grey Cup to lose. It looks like it'll be inevitable that they will host the West Final. And you are going to have to go in the West through Winnipeg to get to the Cup. And that's going to be the challenge. And, the only issues I can see right now it's really just one, is the kicking game and the inconsistency there for Coach O'Shea and the Bombers, because their kicking has been all over the map. And I'm not sure if before the trade deadline, the talk in Winnipeg is that the fan base wants a trade. And they want to find a kicker that they can now they're going to have to give up an asset to get an established kicker. And who do you give up if you're looking at your roster in Winnipeg for a consistent kicker? And if you're dealing with Edmonton and Sean White, who are you giving up to Edmonton at that point? So it's an interesting one, because that's really their only Achilles heel is their kicking game, because other than that, they're solid, both sides of the ball.
Yeah, nobody's scored more points. Nobody's given up fewer points, and they got 6 wins in a row. They're 6-0 against the West Division, and What are you looking at in this kind of home stretch of the season? What storylines have kind of caught your eye as we kind of wrap up the last final third here of the CFL condensed season?
Yeah, well, for one other note with Winnipeg, they have not given up a touchdown in the fourth quarter on defense. The only points they've allowed in the fourth quarter on defense this year have been 2 field goals. And there is actually, on one of the betting lines right now, there's a prop bet on whether or not they will give up a touchdown in the fourth quarter all season long. That's how good they are. Yeah, so that's amazing. So, yeah, you know what? In the season overall, first of all, I am just so thankful that we have football back, that we've seen some great entertaining games. I know scoring is down, and that's caused some frustration with some people that like to see the big high-scoring games. But it's been good football, and I really appreciate that the players have gone through all the protocols they've had to, and all the coaching staff, and all the differences that they have to kind of do. I mean, basically, you're not seeing your family at all, and you're, and hey, listen, I know there's so many people that are so worse off, so I'm not trying to make it sound like, the players are really suffering and things like that. But I just think that they've done a real good job of being prepared, putting a great entertaining product on the field. We've seen some unbelievable catches, where returns are down, the big catch by the receiver is up. Some good quarterback play at times. I'm looking forward to a down to the wire, some upset games where teams on the top of the schedule and on top of the divisions get knocked off by teams that are at the bottom. I think that's going to be possible because on any given day, I believe that's where we're at right now. And Hamilton can be, one of the teams that would agree with that, I would think. And, so I just love the entertainment. I love that it's back. Louis, the ratings are fantastic for our football games. We're averaging well over 500,000 a game. Most games are around 650, some getting over 700,000. That's better ratings than pretty much anything that we do at TSN. So I just the fans are loving it. I applaud the players and coaches for going around all this not going around it, but all the protocol that's been necessary throughout this pandemic and to get this done and to get entertaining football on the field. And I look forward to a strong finish and a race for the playoff positions. And
that's such a great point on the COVID protocols, because, I think, even with the Ticats, with us going back to 100% capacity at our stadium, it's sometimes easy to forget the sacrifices that these players make in regular times, right? A lot of these American players being away from their family, but then to do it one step further, in COVID times, it's been really impressive. And the results, outside of, the outbreak in Edmonton, I think you got to be pretty happy with the way everybody stayed healthy and moving forward this season. Suits, it's always great to connect with you. So thank you so much for doing this. We got to make sure we do it a little more often than we've been doing. I think this is your first appearance since kind of week 1. So we'll have to get you back much sooner than that.
Anytime, man. If you need anything, I'm in.
Perfect. My thanks to Glen Suitor for joining me on Ticats today, and my thanks to you for joining for the Ticats Audio Network. I'm Louie B. Hoping you have a great day.
Ticats Today with Louie B. Subscribe, like, and get your Ticats fix every weekday.